Hey, Jerry.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
Extra good.
Extra good. I like it.
Yeah.
What's making things so extra good for you today?
Oh, it's just based on the principle that every day is even better than the last one. And instead of the middle-aged spiral of downwardness, if there is such a word as downwardness, or there is now, because I notice so many people as they get to a certain age that a lot of the joy of life gets sucked out of them. Not everybody, but you do see people who you think, oh man, that person when they were 15 and 18, they were really happy and joy of life and all that sort of stuff. And then you see them at 50 or 60 or something. And, some people become fearful and their horizons shrink. And doing this work for me, I think has avoided any possibility of going down that spiral. And instead I feel, I'm ascending. I'm on an ascending spiral, not a whirlpool going down.
I love that. That's, it's so apropos. I had this conversation with Gary yesterday. We did our touch base, and I said to him, I'm struggling to find the joy that I had when I was in college or right out of post college. Right. I think I transferred. I think I exchanged joy for financial gains. And you and I have talked about this a little bit. And I said the only
I
thing.
did that. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, yeah. The seduction of the money and the feeling of status and being able to buy what Joshua calls trinkets, buying stuff like, man, I can afford all these clothes. I can buy this car. I can go
Yeah.
to Tahiti for a holiday. Like, yoo Anyway, carry on.
Well
Yeah.
said, right? That's you just summed it up, right?
Carry
And
on.
and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think I attached all of the things that I described, or all the things that I felt meant joy to me, had a direct financial connection. And before that, it wasn't. I didn't have any money in college. I didn't have any money. I had gotten a partial scholarship to go to school. I paid for the rest myself. My parents obviously helped me out as well. I had a job there. If I had 20 bucks in my pocket, I thought I was living on the high life, right? And I had a great time. And then obviously getting right out of college, I exchanged all of that for 20-hour work days, striving for money, striving to make my first million before I was 30, doing all those different things, which I accomplished, but I accomplished it through struggle and effort, right? When you and I have talked about it, and then eventually lost it all to struggle and effort as well. But I'm now at 52, um, trying to, and I feel flat, right? And I said it to Gary. I'm like, I feel drained, exhausted, and flat. And I'm like, and Gary said to me, he feels exhausted too. I was like, I just want to sleep. I'm like, why do I went to my Reiki healer yesterday, and she goes, yeah, there's something with your energy. Gary said to me, he's like, yeah, we're about to get a big download. All the people in this course he's feeling are about to get something, because he said to me, all I want to do is sleep too. And I started laughing. I'm like,
Well, that's a very
that's
interesting
not like
thing.
me.
You say that. Yeah. I mean, I've been sleeping more than usual. Trace keeps saying the same thing. And I was talking with Jessica and Ondine yesterday, and I think Jessica felt at least as flat as I did, which I've never seen before. But carry on. We'll come back to the next course, but carry on with what you're saying, please.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that. So, Gary said to me, so funny, he's like, I don't even want to be doing this call with you. So it's like I started laughing. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the greatest comment ever. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
he's like, I honestly want to crawl to bed. I'm like, oh my God. Like I usually get up at like 5:30, and I'm having some fun. I mean, mornings are beautiful, right? And to your point, I
Yes.
love my mornings,
Yes.
right? We've talked about how it is so great. And like this morning, like my kid, I have to take my youngest kid to school at 7 o'clock every morning. It was 7:02. My kid's like, are you ready, Dad? And I'm like, I'm still I haven't slept till 7 o'clock in like a decade.
Oh, I
I'm
see.
like,
Right. Right.
what? How did I like? And I mean, it was a hard sleep, and I don't sleep hard, with weird dreams. Even though I'm reading this Carlo Castaneda book, the one that's teaching you how to do these dreams.
The
So it was
art of
just
dreaming.
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And it
good.
was.
Good. Good.
I was
Yeah.
reading and I know you've said to me too, like, look at your hands. I was going through that whole,
Yeah.
which was kind of funny. But this whole idea of joy, um, I am I am super interested. So I was talking with Gary, and he goes, and my daughter at college, by the way, is having a freaking blast. Like I got to start sending you some of the images. You and I can live vicariously through her, right? I'm like, she's just going from party to party, doing well in school. She's knocking out of the park, just like, this is just blast. She had a dodgeball tournament that they had at a fraternity that was just like the greatest thing. Their sorority. I mean, it's just fun stuff, right? You got to go have a great time with. And she's like, oh, that's your daughter is there to show you how to have fun again. Like that's the aspect of you.
That's the pure unabashed joy that we're talking about, right? And then why do we lose that? You have it at 18 or whatever, you can probably think 18, yep, we were doing that.
So how do I, that's the question. And I'd love your insight on this is, and mentally, I kind of feel like I'm 22 or 25. I don't really feel like I've grown. Physically, I'm a mess and I'm 52, right? But if you reverse it, mentally, I'm still 25. Although physically, I'm the 52 version. Mentally, I'm the 25. I look at myself in the mirror. I kind of picture myself back when I was 25, but I'm not engaging and having the same fun, but I should be. And I don't kind of understand why. I mean, that's interesting to me. Like, and I go and I play golf and I do things. I go to the gym and I go to the movies, right? And I watch TV with my wife and my kids, and we have fun, right? But I'm like, that wasn't the fun like I was having when I was 25, when I was laughing so hard that I would fall out of a chair because my stomach hurt because something someone said was so funny. And that happened daily. I haven't laughed like that in a decade.
Wow. When we were living in India, in Mumbai, we were living in a very urban area. It's a suburb, really. For people who live in central Mumbai, this is where extended families live, like, middle-aged people with their parents, that kind of thing. So it's pretty boring for them. But it means you've got, little kids, you've got their parents and the parents' parents, in households. So you've got this massive age spread all around our community. And nearby, it was a place called Thane West. Anyway, there was this beautiful big park, and we'd often walk there at sunrise in the morning. And because it's India and not, New Zealand or America, there's endless people doing their daily spiritual practice on the grass there, right? And there were people doing nostril breathing and meditations, and people doing yoga and Tai Chi and meditating. But the favorite were the laughing groups.
What is that?
Just stand there and they would just belly laugh, right? And they'd even do it around the area, what do they call it? I was just trying to think of the word they use. Enclave, our enclave. We lived in a place called Rodas Enclave, which was an assortment of 20 or 30 apartment blocks, with 20 or 30 levels each. And then there was a central gym and swimming pool and grass and parks and everything. And so there was even a group of older people who would do like a 7 a.m. or something laughing group. And they would just stand there and then, on cue, they would belly laugh. They would just let it all out and go crazy. I got to
find that group and join one. I got to join it right away. I love that idea.
Just do it at home when nobody's around, and make sure you're behind the double glazing so the neighbors don't call the cops. The neighbors go nuts. I can hear maniacal laughter. I think he's going to do something crazy. Quick, officer, come.
It's true, right? What we were talking about, how, he was talking about the question that we had, that Joshua had asked about momentum, right? Which I'm trying to get onto this, like, how do I get onto this joyful momentum, right? How do I, because, it starts, right? As you said, we started the call, you're like, it's great day. It's all right. You do, and it matters. And I was talking to one of my kids and she was going down this negative, so-and-so's mean, so-and-so, and just was like a roller coaster. And I said to her, you got to be careful. Like, your energy, it has momentum. And Joshua confirmed that, right? You do. It's like Alec Baldwin. He's an American actor, but he's so angry at the political world. And I love the guy. He's a genius actor. One of the greatest actors, I think, in American theater, either on play or in the movies. And he's just genius, but he's so angry at the political environment, and he's always protesting. He's always out doing, angering, and he's visceral about his anger. He makes it personal. And then you talk about how the universe gets momentum, and then he's on a set in a movie where there's not supposed to be any live ammo, and he kills a person and injures another one in a situation that should never occur. Like,
yeah,
he didn't mean to do it.
That has been worldwide headlines.
Right? I mean, he didn't mean to do it.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah. Yeah, he's
He
famous here as well. He's world famous. Yeah, yeah, I
he's
saw that, and
tremendous, right?
it is the most extraordinary, unlikely event. Yeah,
When you
I've
talk
been
about the
reading the news
universe,
about it, including the news about the woman who's the armorer,
yeah,
et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I get your point. I totally get your point that all that anger, that visceral anger, and it's not like you can compartmentalize that and it doesn't influence the rest of your life because you're spewing out hatred and you carry that with you. I've become very aware of, we'll get back to our original topic in a second. I have become very aware of what you said about energy. That's been something in the last few weeks I've been really aware of, to notice my energy around anything and everything, and the concept that everything is energy. So to go back again,
I
um,
love that. I love
so
that. By
like
the way, that's beautifully said.
when I was 18, 19, 20, I was at university and I did an arts degree first up. And later on, when I was in my 30s, I did a finance degree, a postgraduate finance degree, which was pretty interesting. But in the arts degree, I just did what I was interested in. And I had long hair and patched jeans that I sewed up myself, and leather jacket and a motorbike. And I was, rebellious little so-and-so, my father issues, I think, and all of that, which we worked through very nicely in the last exercise in week 4 of Oneness, which was awesome. And I suddenly realized, I don't need to expect anything of my parents. And then I started realizing all the wonderful things my father did bring to my life. He didn't bring this other list I used to have, which is like, he wasn't much of a father because he didn't do these things. But who said that? Is it carved in stone from Moses bringing it down the mountain or something? No, I just made that shit up. And anyway, so 18, 19, 20, blah, blah. And then I got to graduation after 3 years of uni, got my degree. And I thought, I need to get a job. And I thought, what do I do? And I started looking, and they're all kind of corporate jobs. So next thing I had quite a big beard then. I shaved that off, and then I went and got my hair cut short, and so on and so forth, because I knew that I would have to, to fit in to get a job. And then I worked for 3 years in my hometown, and then I moved to Auckland. So I went from Wellington to Auckland, and I got a new job, and I started making a lot of money. It was a sales role in finance, and I knew when I took it and started doing it, and the money started pouring in, I still remember this feeling. It's like, right, the me that loved poetry and art and literature and music, and I still carried on with music and all of that stuff. And, I'd studied our Indigenous language and culture like in 1976, which people are just waking up to it now, really, in New Zealand. Well, white people like me anyway, only just waking up to it. But I did it out of interest and passion. And I knew that I was forsaking and leaving that me behind, right? I knew that. At that age, I was 24 or something. And I actually consciously knew, you're going to dump that and you're going to go into this world of money. And I kind of knew it was shallow, but man, it was exciting and fun and validating, I guess, because everyone said, man, you're so good at this. And strangely, I'm coming back to many of the things I explored back at that time, such as Carlos Castaneda, because his Teachings of Don Juan, that book was his PhD thesis as an anthropologist, and it was an Anthropology 101 text. And that's how I discovered Castaneda. Anyway, wow. So I'm coming back to a lot of this stuff. And like years ago, along the way, though, I did study Reiki. And so I was talking about auras. I studied aura reading as well, but never really advanced with it. And then I was talking about that stuff with Jessica and Ondine yesterday, and I started getting some books on reading auras to take it beyond, because what I see is what is sometimes called the egg, which is the white aura around someone. So I can see that quite readily, but I've never gone beyond it to see the second or third or subsequent auras, which is what you need to see to be able to read someone's aura. I just see the most basic and powerful energy glow around a person, which is typically white if it exists. Anyway, so I'm reconnecting with all of that now, but that doesn't answer your question. It's like, why do we end up, the real question you asked was, why do we end up at 40 or 50 or whatever it is when so many people end up unhappy, and they're not the jubilant person they were at 18 or 19. And some of it, I think, is about accumulating fears and living in the future and worries and our imagination of responsibilities. And a lot of it has to do with what we believe about financial security, that you gotta have a house and you gotta have a pile of money for retirement. Otherwise, you are screwed. And that may or may not be true, but if you look at the stats for Americans or New Zealanders for that matter, most people are only like 1 or 2 or 3 paychecks from, destitution. So although that may be an ideal, it's not actually the fact for many people, maybe most people in our societies. So, and you could say that's a terrible thing, what a high risk thing, and they're all indebted. And that's all true, they're indebted, but, with credit card and, time payments and leases and all that stuff. But, and we touched on this the other week, that in the same way that you and I never worry about, will there be enough oxygen in the air in my next breath, or the one after that, or the one I need to take next week or in retirement, we're confident that there will always be sufficient oxygen in our next breath. And we're also not worried about, will there be sufficient water for me today, tomorrow, next week, or in retirement, right? So at that level, we are completely happy to trust the universe to provide what's required. And if you look at animals, like where we lived until recently, there were cattle grazing, and the cattle don't seem to be worried about tomorrow's or even the next 5 minutes mouthful of grass, right? They're pretty happy that there's always going to be sufficient feed, and the cattle don't, as far as I can tell, I haven't talked to them, although I had talked to the cat recently, which was interesting. It's a whole other story. And
really, I want to hear that after.
Okay, they came out of a fascinating story. It sounds kind of wacko and woo-woo, but it's very interesting. Anyway, so my point is that the animals, and the cat and the dog, whatever, they don't seem, and the birds, they don't seem to be worried about their next mouthful or their retirement fund, their 401k or whatever you call it, or their mortgage, their time payments. So living in the future, right, with an imaginary worry is a downer.
Well, it's really well said. I read something. You know who Joe Rogan is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. He's coming back to UFC after a hiatus.
Oh, good. He's
starting to comment again on UFC.
Good. He's an interesting guy, right? If you believe or don't believe in him, right? I think he always brings up great questions that you should go out and get answers for yourself. But he said something the other day, and I got to find it, send it to you, because somebody asked him on the show, why are so many middle-aged men so unhappy?
Oh yeah.
Why do people say? Why don't people fulfill their dreams? And I didn't really listen to it till you just said something, and it kind of clicked. And he said, without hesitation, he's like, responsibility. Yep. Women and he's like, and I'm not blaming women. He goes, but men, for us to be valued to a woman, for us to be able to attract a woman that we feel is worthy, or that we're worthy of her, he's like, we take on mountains of responsibility, and we exchange all of our happiness for responsibility and paying bills. He's like, bills kill every man's dream.
Yeah. So I think,
right?
I think that's all true. I wouldn't phrase it that way.
Yeah, you said it where it's these future time payments.
Yeah, well,
right.
So as a man, I agree that there is a strong societal component of you must be a breadwinner and a good one to be worthy of the kind of woman that you desire. And a mate of mine a mate is a New Zealand, Australian, and English word for a male friend. Typically, I know a mate normally is somebody of the opposite sex or your life partner, but it's also used as a friend. So your best mate is your best male friend, for example. So excuse my New Zealand English term. So a friend of mine, Dimitri, I'll think of his other name in a moment, done a lot of men's work over many, many years. And one of his, it's a free download, I think it's really interesting. He says that women marry up, meaning that a woman will marry typically someone of higher status or prospects or financial power, education than her. Women don't tend to marry down. Men will marry up, down, or sideways or whatever. They don't really care, but women tend to marry up. So if anybody doubts about this breadwinner thing, statistically in our societies, that's what happens. I'll get Dimitri's name in a minute. I'll find him on Messenger or somewhere. But men take that on board. And I think one of the great liberations that you and I are probably looking at is, what if I went through a period of not being that breadwinner, will my wife still love and appreciate me? Would I feel admired? Or, would I feel disdain? The worst thing you can have in a marriage is where the woman is disdainful of the man. Dimitri has a word, I'll think of what that word is, around disdain, where she despises him. And you see that sometimes where I can think of somebody I know, a couple where she passed away, but she despised him. And it was horrible to see. And he just carried on. And he was nonplussed. He's like, why is she treating me like this? Why is she like that? And anyway, they had their own issues, but you never want to get to that point in a relationship that if she's disdainful or despising, like that's really, really a bad place to be. So I wouldn't say
I had gone through that. Yeah, I get that in a big way.
Right. So you could say that women do this to men, but that's victim thinking, right? You could also say that men sign up for this and buy into it. And I do know men who are not part of that whole philosophy and don't try to pretend to be that breadwinner hero, and they've kind of liberated themselves from those shackles, and they know that their woman loves them. I'm talking, man woman couples, but it doesn't have to be man woman couples. It can be woman woman or man man, whatever, or whatever it might be. But I'm just talking from my own experience, as a heterosexual male and long-term monogamous relationships, blah blah blah. So for me, it's been a great liberation. It's like, actually, Trace never was attracted to me because of any money I had, and it still makes no difference to her. She's far more interested in having fun, exciting ideas, doing interesting things, and probably above all else, besides sense of humor, would be having interesting conversations and personal growth, you might say, without sounding cliche. So I finally realized that and liberated myself from all of that. And also with my second wife who passed away, she, my first wife, I didn't have anything when I met her because, I was just first working out of university. So she clearly didn't, marry me because of anything I had. And my second wife, I didn't have much when I met her, but then I made a truckload of money while I was with her. But she was interested in me before I ever had the money. So, if the evidence wasn't clear, what the hell was I thinking? None of them, I, 3 times now I'm married. None of these women actually wanted me for money, although at times I had a lot of money during those relationships.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when I met my wife, I had a lot of money, and I went through a situation where I had nothing. And there was that moment, right, where you could begin to see the disdain for my situation. Right.
So who had that disdain? Was that you or her or you?
Well, I think it was both. I had the disdain that I couldn't be, anger and disappointment in myself that I wasn't the breadwinner. I didn't have the money I had a year ago. Right. And I think I saw that. I mean, if everybody is a reflection of how you perceive yourself, then she was just perceiving me as I was perceiving myself. And I was completely disgusted with myself for not being able to financially manage that.
Right.
Once I started to love myself again and realize, oh my God, like none of this stuff matters. My relationship improved with my wife tremendously.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, because we make this stuff up, So Joe Rogan had made a very good point, but the part to me is if that was the man thinking this is done to him, that is victim thinking. Whereas the next level really is, I decided to think that way. Why did I decide to think that way? And I'm going to think differently. And it's about the whole being lovable thing, isn't it? And inherently worthy and lovable. By the way, I found Dimitri's here. So Dimitri spells Dmitri, and his surname is Bilgere, Bilgere. And so I have a feeling that is like a recording, maybe that he may be on his website anyway, about women marrying up, not down, and some really interesting stuff about sort of gender issues, which may not necessarily be mainstream, but I remember doing some work from about 3 or 4 years ago and lying on the couch in the south of France, listening to that and thinking, see, it's etched in my memory, right? I remember in the room in the Dordogne in France in the southwest, lying on the couch, sunny afternoon, summer, listening to that recording and thinking, holy crap, this is good and this is correct, this is right. He's absolutely right about it. Anyway, So if people are interested in that, they'll know where to find it.
Well, so the net actually defines you. If you are married and you've been married, if you take that theory, then you are always good enough for the woman, for your partner, male or female, right? So if somebody is looking to become engaged in a significant relationship with you, and if you take the premise that, let's just say, a woman is always looking to marry up, just because she's with you, you already reached that level. But we don't think that way, right? If a woman is looking up to you and saying, I'm going to marry you because you got tremendous potential, and you're going, I'm not good enough, right? We already, and that where it goes back to momentum, where negative momentum is so easy to get into. So and so didn't do this, so and so didn't do that, the guy didn't show up, the landscaper didn't do it. You could be to flip it and take the positive momentum. It's just as easy, but it doesn't feel that way, right? You could say, oh my God, this is great today. I'm talking to Rob. I had a great call. I got lunch. I bought a great sandwich. I can't wait to have it. You could just go boom, boom, boom. I feel great today. But when given the choice, it seems to me, and maybe I'm misreading it, people jump on that negative bandwagon so quickly. And then when you talk about the positive one, they're like, that's just phooey. That's pie in the sky. That's not happening. All this bad stuff is happening. You're like,
yeah, Pollyanna stuff. Yeah.
Right. Do you see that? And
yeah, totally.
It gets weird.
Yeah. 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 So if you're unrelentingly positive in the face of what people think is negative evidence or evidence of the negative, then people do find that a little bit hard to deal with. But did we answer your original question, which I think is the great question of this episode? Why do so many people, and we're talking about men in particular, but it's not just men, end up at a certain age, 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever, that they don't have the joy of youth that they had when they were 14, 16, 18, 20, whatever. And a lot of the joy of life is sucked out of them. They don't have that spontaneity. And you ask them, do they want to do such and such? And a lot of people just say no. They couldn't necessarily tell you why they say no, but Joshua has identified that and said, well, why don't you, at least just for today, say yes to everything? You can always change your mind and cancel later, but why don't you take the opposite approach? And when somebody says, shall we do this? And you think, oh no, I'm too busy, or, I don't have the time, or don't know if that would really interest me, or, I don't know anybody there, or whatever it might, that movie might be boring, or whatever it might be, or I'm not really into art or plays, or, blah, blah. That's not my kind of band or music. So there's always some excess. Oh, that pub will be too crowded and noisy, and won't be able to hear each other talk. And and then it's like all that flashes through your mind. It's like, nah, and you say, oh no, I don't think so. I'll let you know. But so Joshua says, why don't you say yes? Because when we were 18 and somebody said, shall we ... like everyone was like, yeah, let's go. But
you're right.
So what's your take? What do you think what's the difference between me at 18 and 48 or 58? Tell me what happened.
I kind of lean with Joe Rogan a little bit, and I don't necessarily go with it from a victimhood. These are choices I made, right? The choice I made to get married, to have kids, to own my own company, to hire employees, right? All of those choices that I made took a piece from me. Not because if everything is an aspect of you, I took a piece of me to create it, right? I'm just playing this out. And I kept taking pieces out of me to create different aspects so I could see myself. But I was so stressed and unhappy that every piece I took out to create was more of that stress and unhappiness. So as companies grew, they folded and went into bankruptcy. As finances grew, they folded and went to bankruptcy. As my relationship grew with my kids, they became stressful, became wrapped in fear, because every time I took a piece of myself to create something, right, I took a piece that was in stress, that was in a fight or flight position, right? And I think that's why.
Right.
And by the time I hit 50, when I stopped taking those pieces from me, I tried to get myself whole again, right? Thanks to Joshua. And you do that by meditating, taking deep breaths, loving yourself. And every time you love yourself, you take a piece back and you put it back into the puzzle, right? And then you're like, okay, I'm now whole again. but I just spent the last 30 years ripping pieces off to create things. I no longer want to do that. And I'm like, I can't go drinking and carousing to 4 a.m. like I used to with friends. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? And so I get why I got here, right? To your point, I get why I got here. What my point is I've slowly made myself whole again, and I'm smiling, and I'm not unhappy, nor do I think I don't think from a victimhood. I'm happy. I'm just not joyful. And there's a difference, right? That's the thing, is like, I love my wife, love my family, love my house, love my car, love my job. I'm happy. I'm not joyful.
So what would it
And
take to become joyful? Just before you answer that, and I want to hear some more about this, I found this quote I wrote down for my course about a new approach to money, or how to make money authentically. And it was just from one of the recent Joshua podcasts, 338, Joshua Live. And it was about, for example, if you're in a business and you need to make some calls to bring in some debts, some overdue accounts or whatever, do it in joy, never do it in effort and struggle, never as a victim. In joy, you have all the power that is within you at all times. In fear, you block that power. So you were talking about leaving what sounded to me like leaving bits of you behind, or leaving chunks of you behind, as you went about pushing yourself. Like, it's one thing to push past fear and act on inspiration. It's another thing to spend years doing something you really don't want to be doing, to the point where you said you would sometimes, throw up or dry retch on the way to the office. There was another comment when Joshua was talking to a woman who was writing a book, and it was about writer's block, but it's actually the same thing about letting the creativity flow and where your action comes from. And Joshua said, what is writer's block? And the answer was fear. And what is the fear? The fear is attachment to some outcome. So that was all in that episode 338, just around 20 odd minutes or so. And I grabbed these little snippets because it's like, I've listened to that before, and then I was listening to it driving, and I stopped and wrote it down in Evernote because I thought, this is too good. I'm stopping, I'm replaying, and I'm writing it down. So we were talking about the spontaneity of 18, and you said, the second thing I want to say, that's right, was Jessica talks about this technique that she learned as a student of Carlos Castaneda, which is called recapitulation. So I'm not going to describe it. If she wants to share it, then maybe one day we'll get her to come on and talk about it. I don't know whether it's something she would happily share with the general public, but we'll find out. But in recapitulation, essentially you revisit times in your life where, if you think about it in energy terms, you left energy behind, and you recapitulate the event with a very simple technique, and you reclaim all of that energy. So could you imagine all the energy you've left behind with all those things that happened and all the things you did and the traumatic events and so on? Could you imagine if each one had depleted your energy, your psychic energy, if you want to call it that, spiritual energy, whatever, maybe it's your Reiki, or aura energy, your non-physical energy. If all of those things have depleted it bit by bit, then this explains also why we end up flat at 50. And so I've started to make a list of some really major events. And as soon as I started doing that, and I haven't done the recapitulation yet, but I'm going to do it in the next few days on those things, I suddenly realized, yeah, I did leave a lot of energy in that room in that event. And if I can reclaim that energy, like if I'm this energetic now, I think I'm going to be 18 again in terms of my energy and spontaneity and joy.
What you just said, it was really profound. So I was at my Reiki healer yesterday, and so the way her process is, we talked for a few minutes. She's like, why are you here? And, it's a back and forth, and you sit on a table, and she does about 20 minutes of just energy reading, and you sit back and you talk about it. And she said to me, I have this, I don't know what it was, but I had a lot of energy I had to send to your younger self.
Say that again, please. You had what?
She goes, I had a lot of energy that I had to send backwards in time to your younger self.
That you have to send back in time to your younger self.
Right. So you just said something, and she just said it. So there's no such thing as coincidences, right? That in a matter of 24 hours, and I think, to be honest, the way you just sort of brought the conversation I had about pieces of myself, trying to claim it back, is like, you take so much away that you're flat, and that's what we're feeling, flat. Gary told me the same thing. Like he said, I feel flat. And the difference between happy and joy in my mind is joy is a bounce in your step. Happiness is a comfortable, a comfort in your soul. Like I love people. Like I don't have negative energy. I don't have hate.
Happiness is kind of an overall state, right? It's an
Right,
overall
right.
overall
Yeah.
demeanor. Like, yeah, I'm generally happy.
Like I
Overall,
love
I'm
talking
happy.
to you, right? And I'm not bipping, skipping and bipping and be like, woo! I'm like, hey, it's fun. I love talking to Rob. This is gonna be great.
Yeah.
That's happiness to me. Joy is it's that next level, right? Where when I was a kid, when to your point, somebody would call, hey, listen, let's go bowling. And you're like, bowling? You're like, yeah, bowling.
Yeah.
Bowling. Right.
Yeah.
But you didn't care. You were like, this was the greatest thing on the planet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was, or kids that would fight. I see kids fight, but I don't mean fight as in physically, fight for something when they want to go do something. I want to go ride my bike. It's too late at night. You can't. Come on. I'm like, there is this overwhelming enthusiasm to take that action. Right. That I'm like, I'm like, it's all good. It's all good. I can do it. I cannot do it. I'm fine with either way.
Yeah. Hey, you've listened to some of Jackie Seidon's podcast, haven't you? The Evolution.
She's great.
Podcast.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about her. She does overflow with massive joyful energy when she's like that all the time, right? When I talk to her offline,
she sounds very upbeat.
Yeah, she is. Job. So she's somebody. I think she said on one of her podcasts she might be roughly 40 or something like that. But she is actually somebody who does seem to be still living on that thread of joy, right? She's explosively joyful. So it'd be interesting to listen again and just notice that joy energy and the pure, unadulterated excitement she has of what she's talking about in her Evolution Pod Club. I mean, that episode she did with Gary recently was just absolutely brilliant.
It was great. I listened to it. I listened to it on both Gary's, and then I listened to it on Jessica's back and forth, right? It was great.
Jackie's, yeah.
Living on the thread. Listen, you just said two things that are really, really, I think, powerful. Living on the thread of joy in your 40s, right? And explosive joyfulness. The explosive joy, that it describes exactly what I'm looking for. Like that term, which you just mentioned. And Jackie is very upbeat, no question.
Yeah.
And it's all new. It's in our 40s, to be honest, where all of as I look back now, the greatest gifts were given to me. I didn't see them as gifts. Bought on business partners, opened new companies, went through bankruptcy, had been fired, had nothing, had no job, had jobs. All of that, had kids, kids got old, went to private schools. All of those responsibilities happened in my 40s. That decade, it was like the decade of any possible responsibility that you could figure out in the world to have, I took on. And in the 50, and by the time I'm now for the last 2 years, I've spent all my time letting go of it all. Take it back. I don't want any more of it.
So I just wrote down, because I'm making that course at the moment, but I can see that a part of that course will probably be something around how to rediscover the joy, the pure joy of your youth, the energy.
That's a huge topic, right? Because as well as I do, when you take on the responsibility of making money, of creating a business, of doing investments, however it is, you now feel an overwhelming responsibility to achieve something, whatever that may be. You have a goal, right? You start out with something and have a goal. For me, I knew it was always to double, triple, become this magnet for money. And when it didn't happen, right, it was devastating. And it was, I'll never invest again. I'll never touch money. I'm terrible at this. So it's the idea that money is energy. And if it's not going in that direction, all right, it's a gift for you. And what is that? It's up to you to recognize it. Like I do crypto now, and you and I have talked. It goes up, it goes down. I giggle every time. I don't even. I'm like, whatever. Like it's as I was telling Gary what it is, he's like, okay, you're up 440% on the year. I'm like, yeah, because I told him what I was doing. He told me what he was doing. He's like, it goes up, it goes down. I'm like, but you don't ever take a step back. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't even look at it. If you were in regular stocks at 440%, you'd be like, holy cow, right?
Yeah.
But you're in crypto, you're up that, and you're like, people are like, and I'm like, so it's so funny, right? That we set a goal for us before we take action, thinking that the goal or the outcome is necessary for the action to be just, right, and successful. When it's taking the action that matters first, right? And then embracing the outcome, whatever it may be. Like that to me is a mind-blowing concept. And I still have difficulty with it because I've set goals my entire life, right?
Yeah.
Which is dependent upon an outcome.
The goal is replaced by an intention. The intention may be less specific than the goal, because the goal basically is trying to predetermine the outcome, whereas the universe may come up with something completely different, right? So, for example,
I like that. You should write that down, by the way. Goals replaced by your intention. That's a great. By the way, that is just a great way to set that tone, right, Rob, for what you're talking about, because you and I are goal-focused guys, right? Yes. And if that goal is X, 120%, like no, my intention is for this to be fun, for me to learn some stuff, and for hopefully me to have additional financial prosperity. Much different. That's an intention, much different than a goal of I'm going to make 200% by October 1st.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that just popped into my head. I've written it down. But,
I love it.
Written it down if you didn't say, but that's a good point. Goals replaced by intentions. So, because I efforted and struggled going back maybe 3 years to make a course, an online course, which I made. It's called Traffic Lab, and it's on our website called theprosperitylab.com. And it's DIY online marketing for small business owners, really small to medium or small business owners. And I efforted and struggled and, put down all my best ideas on how to, because all the, online marketing we do as a business, and I made it into a course, and it's pretty good. And, some people buy it and blah, blah, blah. And I quite enjoy it. But then when Ondine and Jessica said to me one day recently, why don't you make a course about how to make money authentically? And then we thought a new approach to money, because the Joshua thing is a new approach to life, and Jessica's writing a book for a course about a new approach to death. So this is the kind of new approach. And Krista is making courses around a new approach to being sober, an alternative to AA, and, a non-fear-based approach to sobriety, or whatever the word is. And she's also doing one about insomnia and some other ones as well, which is all very interesting. So it's all the new approach concept. But my point is that when I started making the course about money using the Joshua teachings and what I've learned in the last 2 or 3 years, whatever it is, 3 years maybe, suddenly it doesn't feel like work, and it's just fun, right? Like if I could do that all day, it would feel like I was goofing off all day, writing that course, making that course. So in other words, I tried to effort and struggle thinking, I know about online marketing, I'll make a course on that. That's awesome. And that was quite good. But when I actually started, because if my goal was, I set maybe 4 years ago, to create and sell online courses and achieve a measure of freedom by doing that. And so I efforted and struggled and decided I had to be down this particular path. And then one day, bang, somebody says, why don't you do this? And that was not my plan. That was not my goal. I would never have said I'm going to do an LOA kind of a law of attraction course. So all I'm trying to say is that you could say the universe delivered what I wanted, but not in a way I ever imagined. But it took me 3 years to actually shut up and listen and just do what came in. And also something you said last time we spoke, I felt slightly bad about, I was slightly ridiculing of some of the comments I read out from people on Reddit in the LOA thread, on the Law of Attraction thread, subreddit. And that it was such simplistic approach to the Law of Attraction that people have just discovered it and think it's a ninja mind trick. And I was quoting a guy actually from the finance thread in this case, and it was people talking about the meaninglessness of their life and careers, their life in finance. And most of them didn't like it at all, and were doing it for all the Rogan reasons, you might say, Joe Rogan's reasons, because, I'm doing it to support my family. I hate it, but it's what I do, and the money's so good. Blah blah blah. So, and then I told you about a young guy who's like maybe the one who asked the question in the first place. Quite an insightful young man in his own way, and he was like, I don't actually like the work at all. It wasn't what I thought from studying at college. It's boring, but I do like the people I work with. But what I really like is when we go to the pub on a Friday night and we can talk about sports or new bars or my favorite bars or my favorite restaurants or whatever. And, and then I was, a little bit dismissive of that. And I said, well, if that's the extent of your life, what kind of a life is that? And you said, well, and this was a great insight, I thought, you got us back on the right path, in my opinion. You said, well, that young man could actually start to be a TikTok publisher, and he could actually do reviews for people of his age in his city of restaurants and bars and the best things on Netflix or TV, or what's coming up in sport or whatever it might be. And it's like, you could actually turn that into a passion. It doesn't, it's a side hustle that doesn't detract from your day job, but somebody who does that one day is going to do really well at it and liberate themselves from the hamster wheel, the treadmill.
Yeah, no, it's for me, and and you go back to what you were doing when you were talking about writing courses. Your intention, and that's the difference between a goal and an intention, right? Your intention was to provide a service to people to help them, right? And then you had said it's a marketing course, right? But if you step back and you evaluate that goal and rethink it as an intention, then you will absolutely, to your point, get to the point where you're providing that service, right? That incredible, you have knowledge that is an aspect of me. You and I are talking because you have to bring something to me and I have to bring something to you. We're both in each other's reality, delivering aspects. Now, if I step into your reality in your situation where we start talking about all your stuff, right? Well, then I'm not actually providing the service you're asking for. So if I continue to be my true self and have these real conversations where you tell me what you feel and I tell you what I feel, versus completely having this one sort of collaboration on this. Once that person does that, right, and we all look for people to do that, come and agree with me, just come and say yes, yes, yes. We've then taken what that person's role is, which is supposed to enlighten you and give you something that you like. Everybody's planted in each other's lives to enlighten them to something, but instead we try to control them and have them just agree with what we're saying, and then we remove that. We remove the gift that they're supposed to give us, and it's gone. Like that to me was that was sort of the oneness, right? That's what we've been going through. I look at my parents differently. I look at my friends differently. I look at a conversation. I was in a situation, somebody said they were, well, that person was rolling their eyes and talking bad about you. And I'm like, okay. It's just like, I would have got in my car, driven to the guy's house. But I'm like, cool. I'm like, I'm not, hey, hopefully somebody, can do what he needs. I'm like, that's okay by me. Like it's even with the political, I was a diehard Trumper Republican. I don't even care anymore. I'm like, whatever. Biden's great, Trump's great, whatever, whoever. Like just as long as everybody's safe, do what you got to do. Like like, I don't care. Guns, program. I don't care anymore.
Yeah. So that stuff in that episode where Jackie and Gary talked, it's on both of their podcasts, Joshua Live and Evolution Pod Club. That one was amazing because they did talk about gun control and politics and COVID and how people seek agreement from others, but they're saying, a position to be is instead of strongly for or against something, at one extreme or the other, like on the bell curve, why don't you sit in the middle and be completely neutral about presidents, Republicans, Democrats, COVID, vaccine, masks, all that sort of stuff. And also, gun control, they mentioned that as well. Like you could be fearful of, mass murder, or you could be fearful they're going to take your guns away. Those are the extremes. Well, you could sit in the middle and not care. So that's a very good place to get to, I think. With that inspiration thing, about 3 or 4 years ago, I set an intention. I remember I was sitting in the apartment in Mumbai, and I set an intention that I wanted to do some work for somebody in the spiritual domain. And so the people who came to mind that I wanted to do some work for were Gary, with Joshua, and John Keogh, who's the original Mind Power guy from back in the 90s, a Canadian guy who's, it's an interesting take on spirituality, a really good entry point for a lot of people.
What's his name, John? What?
John, Kehoe, Kehoe, John Kehoe. So he wrote the original Mind Power book, which is, I think, still really good. So I set an intention to do that. And long story short, next thing you know, I'm in Florida where Gary and Tracy are staying, and I'm staying with them, right? From Mumbai to Florida, there I am. And then, fast forward, and then Tracy's putting all of the Ascension Experience stuff live into an online format for Gary, because as he scales the stuff, as more people come in, it's just not possible to do it all manually anymore. So Tracy's automating everything for him. And, we're helping him with his website design and bringing new people in and offering free, things to get people interested, so they can then do the 7-day course and so on and so forth. Anyway, so we're doing all of this stuff. And then I'm starting to do some work with people in the Joshua community, helping them promote their podcasts, their courses, make their courses, price them, design them. So I'm doing a lot. And it all, previously, I was thinking, I really want to get a version of my Traffic Lab in there for the people in our coach registry, internationalcoachregistry.com website. I really want to get people into my businesses from the Joshua community. And it was a transactional goal-based thing. And I never quite got there. And then suddenly I realized, I've actually got a whole lot of clients who we're doing this work for in this area now. And it just kind of happened. And then Jessica said one day, a week or two ago, she said, your role is to disseminate the knowledge of, because we know how to use the tools of Facebook ads and Google ads and search engine optimization and all of that. So we know how to reach bigger and bigger audiences for everybody as part of our work. And she said, your role is to disseminate the knowledge, the Joshua knowledge. And I thought, that's true. That is true. And it, it's, I haven't gone looking for the money or set any targets or budgets on it, but it is working out, and it's the most fun work of all, and it pays. And then we were at this astronomy conference for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's an Astrotourism Academy. So dark sky tourism is a massive and growing area, and New Zealand has a lot of dark skies. And Northern Hemisphere people like to see the southern skies because they're different. They don't, most people live in the Northern Hemisphere. It's light polluted. And so they get clear skies and they see different stuff. So this is a retired professor of astronomy, a very eminent man, worked in Washington, DC and blah, blah, blah. And so he's put this together with a friend of mine who's a retired investment banker. And so long story short, we went along, we made the website for him. The whole thing is like pro bono, right? He's not looking to make money out of it. He just wants to train people in astrotourism and to be dark sky guides and so on, to make sure they know what they're talking about. So we went along as his guest because we did the website and all that blah, blah for free. And then there was this guy who's a very eminent astronomer, and he and his wife have got asteroids named after them. Like they discover asteroids and comets and things. He's 77 or something, retired. And the postal service here had published a stamp in their honor, so they got their own postage stamp, right? And he was showing us his new book, and Trace and I looked at each other and said, those diagrams are horrible. And I said to Trace, he's trying to do it in PowerPoint, would he be better off in Canva? And she said, no, he'd be better off if I did it all for him. I said, do you want to? And she said, yeah, I'd love to. He's an amazing guy. He's just somebody I was talking to described him as a humble genius, right? He's just, anyway, so next thing, I go up to him and say, we've done this, that, and the other. Like, here's some of the stuff we've done for people in this community. We would love to do this for you, no charge, of course. Trace would love to make your diagrams for you. So next thing you know, we're collaborating with this, in his domain, a world famous astronomer. And I thought, I got this similar role in astronomy. Like, compared to these guys, I know nothing about astronomy, although I'm interested. And I'm on the board of a telescope company that gives profits back to astronomy. But I thought it's the same thing, that my role is actually to disseminate the knowledge. So none of that came from a goal, right? It just popped up out of the blue, and it's the most satisfying and interesting work of all. And within that entire framework, there are parts that actually pay me quite well also. So although that was a long story around that whole thing, how did I go from thinking I had to be in the investment industry to make, a whole lot of money, and letting go of I'm only worthy if I'm a good breadwinner, to letting go of goals and setting intentions to be wanting to do the work that you feel passionate about. So you can see what I'm trying to say is that I've just realized I've actually moved along that path a long, long way, which is why I'm writing about it. Stop there. You speak.
No, I love that. And it actually is like inspiring, right? Because let's just take a moment and think of that for a second. Let's go back to your first job, right? You became successful. You started working with a successful company, forget names, but there was success. You were attracting success. The most successful people in that, so much so that you were able to make 7 figures and get 7-figure payouts. You then said, wait a minute, right? I want to see spiritual. Gary is probably next to Abraham Hicks, and I've spent a lot of time trying to understand channeling. I think what he's doing is Joshua is beyond everybody, right? At the premier level is Joshua, in my opinion. You attracted that. Then you go and you do astrologer. If you look at what you're doing and where you're meant to be, you're always going to the preeminent place. But you don't appreciate it. You just like, but if you take a step back and you look at it, everybody that you've attracted, when you want to do spirituality, like you and I have taken all these courses, right? We get it. Like, the Tonys, right? All the deans, the Dr. Joe Dispenzas, all of these great people, right? Nobody's competing with Joshua at this point, not even close. Yeah. It's, his teachings are so far advanced and so much better for your soul, right?
And so practical. I love the practicality, because everything else is like, I get that, and it makes a lot of sense and it feels good. What do I do now? Right this very minute, what do I do?
Well said.
This has just happened. How do I approach that? What is the information value in this event for me? And it's the first really practical living system I've ever come across. So I sometimes call it adaptive, for want of a better word. In other words, is your spiritual or religious belief making you more happy? Is it making you happier, more joyous, more spontaneous? Are you rediscovering your sense of fun and having a life which is aligned with your true values and who you really are and all that kind of thing? So one of the reasons I love the Joshua work is because it is that, and no other work I've ever come across is. And I was talking to somebody who I'm very close to, family member, about her religion, and I asked her some questions about it, and she gave me some answers. And I talked to Trace afterwards, and I said, in my opinion, that belief system, that religion, is not what I would call adaptive, because it's not really giving you a map on how to live day by day. It's not actually bringing to you joy, spontaneity, letting go of stress, letting go of worry. Like, it's not giving you the most fundamental things, which, I suppose if you go back to the messages of Jesus, most of those probably were that, but they kind of got ironed out or filtered out somehow along the way by churches. I mean, Jesus and Christianity and churches are all separate things, in my opinion.
You're 100% right, and it's interesting, right? But we're taught to, what I think to Joshua is, for me, if you go back to, I spent my life taking pieces of myself to create things. It helped me take all those pieces back and actually love myself and understand that every one of those pieces was a limiting belief, right? That you create something out of lack, right? I was creating things out of lack, was ripping these things off of myself to be successful, to be recognized, to be validated. I need to have my own business. I need to have a title of CEO. I need to have a certain money in the bank, right? Boom. It was all lack. I was creating everything out of lack. Joshua helped me understand, take it all back, take a deep breath, enjoy and love. What do you want to do? And let's go after that, because you've obviously accomplished anything you want. Like, look at you. You've accomplished anything you want with the preeminent people within your immediate area, across the country. It doesn't make a difference. You attracted those people when you needed them. Like, that's insane. If you step back and look at it, you're like, okay, I'm not even interested in astrology, but the guy I'm now working with is on a stamp. That's insane.
It's, a lot of people say that it's astronomy, not astrology, by the way.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Astronomers would shudder at the thought of astrology, whereas astrologers are interested in astronomy. So anyway, astronomy is purely the science, right? It's science. It's physics.
Gotcha.
It's space physics, yeah. But anyway,
right? If you really start to break it down, right, in these little compartments, but that's what the universe is giving us. Like, that's how powerful
Yeah,
we
that's a
are.
good insight, and it is true, because I've ended up working with Gary, who I agree with the Joshua teachings as the preeminent source of information right now, and also with the guy who put that astrotourism school together. Somebody said to me, he's New Zealand's preeminent astronomer, and as I say, he worked in, he's been involved in international associations, like, and worked in
He's got a
Washington
stamp.
DC.
He's got his
Yeah,
own
yeah,
stamp.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Postage stamp. Yeah, they've both got wiki pages, which I'm going to upgrade for them, with their, because I'm a wiki editor now. Just one other interesting thing was, in terms of retracing parts of your past that I have moved on and rejected, is I'm sure I've told you in the past that I had a Catholic upbringing and I stopped going to church when I was 18. But I did the whole thing, and I was an altar boy, helping the priests deliver the mass and all that kind of stuff. So I was really into it. And even like, the kids scouts thing that I went to, like Cubs back in the 1960s, was a Catholic group, through the church. So and my mother she's 91, she's a devout Catholic, and my father strangely converted to Catholicism after being agnostic. And so about the time I stopped going to church, he got into it anyway. So I realized that in its own way, that had opened me up to the fact that there is more to life than just the physical. And in that case, it was the Catholic version of, God and the Holy Trinity and all that kind of stuff. And I realized, well, actually, it was my original path into spirituality, because at times I did realize I knew there was something more. And then I rejected it because, religion is blah, and, I don't believe all that stuff. But we coincidentally, in our little village, have made friends with the local Catholic priest, and he comes up for a coffee or occasionally for a Friday night gin. And he's a really good guy, a very interesting man, and we have great conversations. And so I decided, for the first time in like 45 years, to go to a little small weekday mass. So I went to the Catholic mass for the first time in 45 years last week, which was, I just felt like I wanted to close that loop, and I don't want to, give him the wrong idea of, back in the fluff sort of thing, but I think he thinks that anyway. So that was a really interesting experience for me, to reconnect with all of that stuff from my past. It was very powerful.
How did that, with what you know now, and because I'm a Catholic as well, born, raised, went to Catholic school, the whole 9 yards.
I assume, being Italian American, that Catholicism will be in there somewhere, right? Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So I rejected, when I graduated, when I got on my own, I rejected the church solely out of fear that I just thought God was going to damn me. I was going to hell. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. So I stopped doing it. I mean, when my wife and I got married, we didn't get married in a church. Like, my parents were all, I'm like, I don't care about any of that stuff. Like, I honestly was like, I'm not dealing with this God who is going to punish me. My parents were big, like, for everything I'm doing. Like, when it's done, it's done. And whatever my consequences are, I'll think about it at that point in time. But I literally stayed away from church, grew up for 20 years, at least once a week going, if not twice a week. And then for the next 30 years, stayed away until I started reading Neville Goddard and started to understand that he doesn't believe the Bible is a recount of history. He thinks it's a psychological thriller written to teach you how to deal with the world.
Right. A metaphorical tale.
Well,
yeah. That's interesting. I'm just trying to think of the word that describes a Christian allegory. So I believe the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit are Christian allegories. And Pilgrim's Progress, John Bunyan, going back hundreds of years, that was one of the original Christian allegories. Metaphorical tales with a Christian theme. Yeah. One of the problems I had as a teenager with the church, and fearing going to hell, was, like, in those days, a lot of the stuff was very strict, like back in the 1960s and 70s. And some of the problems I had, number one, was cursing, right? Like, you're not allowed to say, the F word, and certainly not take the Lord's name in vain. And another one was drinking and getting drunk, which in those days was a terrible sin. And the other one, of course, was girls and sex. It's like, hold on, if I can't curse, get drunk, and get into girls, it's like, when I was like 16 or 18, it's like, well, I am doing those things, and I'm going to go to hell with Sloan. Now, this doesn't seem right because I feel so good.
That is, you know what? I feel the same way. That's a great way to end today's segment, by the way. That's a final line. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. This is awesome.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah. Okay.
All right, my friend.
See you next
Bye-bye.
time. Have an awesome evening. Bye.
You too, my friend.
Bye.